In July, it was widely reported that plans to limit the cash ISA allowance were put on hold. But now the Financial Times are reporting that the Chancellor is looking to use the budget to revive plans for a major overhaul of the ISA system to try and get Britain investing. This comes as a little bit of a surprise, as last time round there was fierce backlash. However, here we are again, and now the rumours are circling to what this could actually mean, with the Financial Times suggesting the possibility of the cash ISA allowance being halved from 20k to 10k. At the moment, there's a lot of unknowns, but in this video, I aim to answer all the key questions based on the information we do have. So what is happening, why is it happening, and what we can do. As always, this video is not financial advice, and please do your own research to keep up to date. So let's get into it, and let's kick off by looking into what actually is happening. ISA reform has been discussed for many years by many different governments, and the reason why it's been discussed tends to stem from three main reasons. Firstly, because the current system is complex. Secondly, to try and get more of us Brits investing. And thirdly, to try and get more money flowing into British companies. Plans have taken many different forms over the years, with the last Conservative government proposing a 5k additional British ISA allowance. Ultimately, the current system remains the same at the time of recording at least, where we have a 20k annual ISA allowance, and that money is shielded from tax, and you can choose how to use your annual ISA allowance across four main ISA account types. In a cash ISA, stocks and shares ISA, innovative finance ISA, and lifetime ISA. Between these, there's around 15 million open ISAs, but of that, cash ISAs are by far the most popular, making up nearly 10 million, with stocks and shares the next popular at around 4 million. So as of today, most of us just use ISAs as essentially a savings account, but Rachel Reeves wants to change this. According to the Financial Times, she remains committed to keeping the overall 20k annual ceiling, but is looking at cutting the cash ISA limit. The FT mentioned several possibilities are on the table, with one possibility being to cut the cash ISA allowance from 20k to 10k. So hypothetically, if this was to happen, how could it work? Well, it would likely work in a similar way to the 4k lifetime ISA allowance we have today, in that you'd be limited to putting 10k annually every tax year into the cash ISA, but free to mix and match between the other ISA types within that overall 20k allowance. So for example, you could put the full 20k into a stocks and shares ISA, you could do some mix and matching in putting 10k into a cash ISA and 10k into a stocks and shares ISA. You could do even more mix and matching in putting 4k into a lifetime ISA, 10k into a cash ISA, and 6k into a stocks and shares ISA. You get the picture, there's many possibilities as long as you stick to the limits. The idea behind it is that for those who currently use the full 20k allowance towards a cash ISA, those individuals would be limited to 10k in their cash ISA, so would then need to look at another account type for using the remaining ISA allowance, and they could look at a stocks and shares ISA and put the remaining 10k in there. At least that's the logic which Rachel Reeves seems to be hoping for. So why is she hoping for this to happen? Well, there seems to be two main reasons. Firstly, to get more of us investing, to enable us to get better returns on our money in the long term, and secondly, to get more money, more investment flowing into British companies. Whether cutting the cash ISA allowance is the right way to achieve those aims, we'll just have to see, assuming that this does get implemented, but the policy has been questioned by many whether it will achieve those aims. To get more of us investing, reforming and simplifying ISAs will of course be important, but does cutting the cash ISA limit simplify the ISA structure, or does it just create another rule and add complexity? Alternative ideas have been put forward to simplify the ISA structure through creating a hybrid ISA where you could hold both cash and stocks and shares. This would achieve simplification and try and drive a transition between cash and stocks and shares more naturally. But even with this approach, it's still only looking at the surface level. The problem with this, and also with policies around cutting the cash ISA allowance, is that without widespread changes in education around investing, we'll still likely have a very strong savings culture. This means that if any surface level policies do come to fruition, they likely won't have the expected impact and likely won't get as many people as the government want investing. An AJ Bell survey supported this, finding that if the cash ISA allowance was indeed cut, the majority of cash ISA savers would just stick their money in another cash savings account rather than seek to invest it. If we want more long-term cash ISA savers to make this switch and start investing their money, then we likely need to go deeper beyond account incentives and look to educate the masses around investing. Maybe through a widespread education program, we can change our culture in the UK to be closer to the US in terms of a retail investing culture. And maybe one day we can get to the point where I can go down the pub and talk to my mates about investing like we do football. Maybe that's a little utopian and a little extreme, but we can at least get to the point where investing is not a taboo subject. Maybe that's what Rachel Reeves will announce in her budget. Maybe she'll announce a widespread education program around investing. Her intention to get more people investing in the long term is right in my view. It's a good thing, as over the long term, investing has historically provided better returns than saving if we consider investing in a global index fund. Of course, capital is at risk and your investments can go down as well as up, and it's recommended that you only look at the long term for investing, but nonetheless, historically it has provided better returns compared to savings. If Rachel Reeves does announce a widespread education program alongside ISA reforms, then who knows? Maybe her policies will work in the long term. However, before I talk too positively about our Chancellor, let's talk about whether cutting cash ISA allowances would help achieve her second reported aim in increasing the level of investment, the level of money flowing into British businesses. The idea is that if more of us hold stocks and shares ISAs, if more of us invest through stock and shares ISAs, then more money would be flowing into British businesses, as would use this account type to invest in UK equities. It's likely that if more people did use a stock and shares ISA, of course more money would flow into British equities, but the level of impact may be questionable. The reason I say this is because many people invest in global equity funds, and the UK stock market only makes up around 4% of the global stock market. So if you invest in a global equity fund, you'll likely get around 4% exposure to UK businesses, which is only a small amount. Plus, some of the most popular funds for UK investors are also non-UK equity funds. For example, the American Stock Market Fund, an S&P 500 fund, is one of the most popular funds about. So ultimately, the level of investment coming from this hypothetical policy, with more of us using stock and shares ISAs, will depend on what we invest in that stock and shares ISA. It could be the case that this hypothetical policy leads to a huge amount of money flowing into stocks and shares ISAs, but that most of it doesn't go into UK equities. To overcome this risk, the Financial Times has reported that considerations are taking place on whether to revive the British ISA, which was proposed by the last government. When it was proposed by the previous government, it was suggested that this could be an additional £5,000 tax-free allowance used for UK equities only. This would provide a big tax incentive to invest in UK companies. But it's likely again that there would be a need for other policies to be used in combination to make investing in British companies more appealing. For example, getting rid of the stamp duty for UK shares. Ultimately, it does seem that several options are still on the table for the Chancellor around ISA reform. Until this FT article came out, we didn't know that any option was on the table around ISAs, at least for this budget. But here we are, and now the next question is, what do we do and what's next? Well, the budget will be announced on the 26th of November, So we'll find out then one way or another. The last time that rumours circulated around ISA reform, lots of people started preparing by trying to put more money into their cash ISAs, max out their cash ISAs in advance. Ultimately, nothing happened in the end after all that discussion, and it could be the case like this again. We're just speculating at the moment. All the information we have, all the information I have at least at the time of recording, is from this Financial Times article. The only way we'll find out for sure what's happening is through the Chancellor's budget on the 26th of November. So let's see what happens, and if you do want to prepare and go through different strategies for yourself, then please do your own research or contact a financial advisor. In my view, ultimately, the intention behind all of this in getting more people investing for the long term is great, but the method, the way, the mechanism to go about doing it is questionable whether that will achieve the aim. In my view, we need to have more widespread education around investing to get a culture of investing. Currently, our culture is very much focused on saving, which is fine, but some people could be missing out on some long-term returns for investing. That's my 2 pence. Let me know what you think about all this discussion around ISA reform. We thought it was done, but now it's come back. Thanks for watching.